to stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's play ball. We got reports. Let's see. Well, first of all, any new people here tonight? Anybody who's never been to a meeting before? Eric?
Been a member since
Yeah.
the beginning of the year. I was here in January for the day we had first piece.
So this is your first meeting.
And your name?
Here in one.
Oh, yeah.
I met you in January.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's right now, he's in second place on the next bag.
Yeah. Give me some motivation to
He
get
really
out.
loves fishing.
Looking at credentials.
Some of us.
Congratulations, he's tearing.
Started out strong.
Yeah, you're watching.
I've been. I had two my first year, so.
Mr. Secretary, do we have any new members that signed
We
up?
picked up one during the off season. He's been on Facebook
No.
a whole lot. Hardy Johnson, he's from Anacoco, and he joined the club a couple of weeks ago, so we're excited about him.
Yeah, he's been really enthusiastic.
He's very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
He's got a wife and a couple of girls, and he seems to have gotten back into fly fishing. So he's tying, and I'm excited for his participation. It should be a good.
How many of you follow us on Facebook? Okay, just- Oh, yeah, if you go to if you're on Facebook, if you're not on Facebook and you want to check it out, we have a very active Facebook page. It's maintained by what's his name?
Bill Morrison has
Denise.
Denise and Bill have, or they co-it now.
Yeah,
They have Kisatchie Fly Fishing member share.
right. We have our page, Facebook,
Yeah.
which is basically just announcements, like meeting announcements and things like that. And then the member share, if you're a member of that group, anybody can post. And so we have people posting pictures of fish they caught, flies they tied. It's a very good page, group. So check it out. You don't need to be a member of Facebook either. You can use the link on the website that we have. And you can go to the page without being on Facebook and look at some of the posts out there.
So you must link up with folks to fish with.
Yeah, you post out there, I'm sure you can get people who respond. You know, it's been done in the past, I know. We've had, people say, I'm going out fishing, Vernon today. Anybody want to come?
Yeah.
Or Natchitoches or King River. So. Mixed bag. So Bill's not here tonight, but he gave me the stats, and this is a week ago. We have right now, the largest participation that we've ever had. We actually have 12 more entries than we did in all of 2023. We had 173 last year. We have 185 entries so far this year. So we're past record pace. This is record pace. Chris Williams is in first place with 27, but Aaron is right on his heels at 24. I don't know where you find 24 different fish to catch on a fly right now. Bill's in third place with 18. Jim's got 15. Noah Hoyt has got 12. I think he's our youngest member. Ed Jones has 11, and Jeff has 10. So, good going, guys. I'm looking down there at that list. And I see I've only got one in. I think I've got like 13 or 14 on the red stick. So I need to get busy and put some fish into this thing.
Do they list what species they call?
You can go to on our website
Website?
and look at the
Okay.
the entries.
Okay.
And you can see where they were caught, what flies were used.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's how I found places to go.
Yeah, that's the purpose of it. You wanna go catch catfish on fly rod. Okay, well, yeah, you go out there and you see, well, Lake Concordia is almost a sure thing right now.
Okay.
Go catch catfish on fly rod. But that's the purpose of that. I just wanna say that even if you have just 4 or 5 entries, You never catch up to Aaron and Chris and those guys. Register fish. Put fish in there because every entry gets a ticket into the consolation drawing. We actually had nicer prizes in the consolation drawing the last 2 years than we had in the, they paid to not win. So, yeah, put your name in, put those entries in and you, for every entry that you make it to the next bag, you get a ticket at the end of the year at the Christmas party for one of the consolation prizes. And I think we drew like 7 or 8 last year. Consolation, maybe more than that, consolation prizes, so, it's, you know, we're trying to encourage as many people just to participate, just put entries out there. Fly time is gonna be our next session, fly time session, September 9th. Jim is gonna do the Bad Hair Day. That's one of his favorite flies out there. He catches all kind of fish, chain pickerel, shoe pick, bass, spotted bass, everything on that fly. So it's a great predator pattern. Anybody ever seen one of those flies? Yeah. It's amazing because it doesn't look like it'd be much, but when you put it in the water, it just does this.
And just pulp.
Yeah, it's just pulse. It's not that difficult to tie either. So that's definitely one you want to put into your box.
What is it called?
What's that?
What was the name of the fly?
Bad Hair Day. The guy who created is quite a character. He's got a lot of hair too. He might use this own. That's gonna be September 9th. Few things out there that I sent an email out about the list of fall events. We have 3 coming up. They're important to us. The Salmon Hunting and Fishing Day is the last Saturday in September. We need volunteers, both official and unofficial. So if you're an official volunteer, you go to the link in the email that's sent out and click on it and you can get a t-shirt. You can get a meal ticket for being there that day. You don't have to be there all day. You don't have to be there. If you're official volunteer, really, if you're any volunteer, if you can come out for 2 hours, that's good enough. You can come out for 1 hour, that's good enough. We just need some people out there to handle all the people that come up and talk to us about fly fishing. What's fly fishing, where you can do it around here, where you can do elsewhere like Arkansas. Just talk about the club. If you tie flies, bring your tying stuff. I have 2 tables out there and we tie flies as well. And of course, we teach people to cast. And it's short, but a lot of these kids, they pick up that fly rod. You give them, you know, a 1 minute lesson, and they're out there in about 3-4 minutes and they're casting really, really nice. As Mel Krieger is gonna tell you, little kids learn fast because they do it the right way at the start. You don't have bad habits. So there's that. And then the Tuesday of that week, we have the farmers market has invited us to the annual Heritage Day. And that's gonna be from Tuesday 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Y'all know where the farmers market is up in there on Jackson Street, across from the Baptist Church, yeah. So we're gonna set the tent there. Just come, same thing we'll do Saturday, buy flies and do some casting. And then a little later,
What time is that?
3 to 5:30. And then on November 9th, it's the annual Sugar Day Festival at Camp Plantation House. And so we have 2 long tables in there that we tied at last couple of years. We're gonna go ahead and do some more time again this year. I don't think we're gonna do any casting. There just didn't seem to be much interest in that, except for the kids who wanted to fight with the rods. But we'll definitely be there tying flies again. And that's always a great time. And all these events right here, we always pick up, you know, 1 or 2, maybe even 3 new members. So it's a great way for us to get our exposure out to the community. And then there's some others activities going on. On September 14th, the Arctic Texoma Fly Tyers is going to have Natchitoches Fly Tying Expo in downtown Natchitoches.
What's the
That's-
date on that?
September 14th. And so I haven't gotten a lot of details. Mike Hawkins is in charge of that. He hasn't put a lot of details out on there. they may be looking for tires, I'm sure they're looking for tires. So, if anybody wants to go there and tie, it's gonna be in the council building, they have a big room like this. Maybe a little bit bigger, and, they'll have a time inside in there. And, that's the same weekend as the meat pie festival, yeah. So, you can take in some of the fly tying and go to the meat pie festival. October 18th to 20th is the North Toledo Bend Rendezvous. That's at North Toledo Bend State Park, Swally. And that's a whole weekend, but you can go just for the day. You charge like $5 to go for the day, but if you want to go for the weekend, it's pretty cheap. It's like $20 an individual, $40 for family, includes the lodging and meals. So you
Plenty
can't
of
beat
food,
that. What's that?
Plenty of food.
Oh, yeah, too much food. And then November 9th and 10th, Chris and I have talked about this before. In College Station, Texas, College Station Club has an annual festival like we have. It's called the Roundup. And it's pretty neat. They even have a dinner that night. So, and live music. So it's even better than ours, maybe. But the next day they have something called a gathering. And that's for fly casting, people who are serious about fly casting. If you're interested in being an instructor, for example, they have a track that whole day on what it takes to become a fly casting instructor. And things you need to learn. Some of the stuff we'll be watching tonight. And then some of the stuff like Bill Gamble's 5 Essentials of Casting, things like that. So if you're interested in becoming a fly casting instructor, or even if you just want to greatly improve your fly casting skills and learn about them, that's a great event to attend. Any other business? Fishing reports.
Hot.
Yeah.
The water's hot.
Yeah.
Fish are hot. Fish are deep.
Fish already cooked when you get them.
So I go out on the dock at Cotillo Rec area. At the end of the dock, it's about 18 feet deep. And I have a portable fish finder that I use in addition to my regular garment. I've got one that's a little portable one, and it's got a transducer cable that's about 6-7 feet long. And what I do is I drop that transducer down 5 feet below the surface of the water. So that gives me a good reading about what the water temperature is like. This past week it was 88 degrees. So, but last year at the same exact time, the water temperature was 92. Remember we had 110-degree days, the drought, everything else. So it's not as bad as it was last year, but it's still pretty warm. Here's the good news, because I used to, former life, I worked for the Office of State Climatology in Baton Rouge. And I studied climatology at LSU grad school. When you get to September 1st, you get something called radiative cooling, which means even if the air temperature does go down, water and other stuff starts to cool off. Because the days the nights are starting to get longer and the days shorter, enough to the point where you get enough evaporation such that it cools the water down. So you start to see a decline in the water temperature. If we get a front that comes through in September that has low temperatures at night, 60 degrees or less for 2 consecutive nights, you see a precipitous decline in that water temperature, and you start to see those sockle. They'll move from the depths out there, and they'll move into the shallows. I did really well at the cave the last couple of years after we had 2 cold fronts like that in late September, catching fish about 8 feet of water out there. Just find the down trees that were in the water and fish the ends of those trees, catch those fish. So they move up. So keep that in mind. It's not too long from here. Regular sunfish are really active too in the month of September. So might want to keep that in mind too. Caught a lot of big red ears out of Caney Lake a couple of years ago fishing in September. So
What's a good fly for those sockeye right here?
I tell you, float butts, I use tungsten bead hare's ear. I have this fly called the Countach Plus I use. My son's got one he created called the Sockolator, which has been really good. I'll put that up on Facebook, even on the website for you to see.
So small.
But if you go back and look at a lot of flies that we've tied, the last few years, anything like that micro jig booger is really good. That's a really good fly.
So smaller trout type flies, rather than like a small clouser is too much.
Yeah, a little bit.
Little minnow type are too much.
Mhm. But another thing that happens in September is you start seeing bass busting shad, chasing shad. I'm seeing it right now. It's starting up in Pooteal. It happens a lot in Kincaid. Of course, Toledo Bend, it's crazy over there. You can get onto a school where you've got like 2-3 acres of bass blowing up shad. And that's where you want to have your shad patterns and piles of minnows and anything that looks like a minnow or shad out there.
We had a lot of cicadas here this year. Did anybody have any luck imitating those?
Not here, but a little
And a
mo.
little mower did, just for real short, it's a short window.
Yeah.
It was crazy good though.
Well, in Arizona, we have a place where it's good for about 2 or 3 weeks there, at East Ferry. And like 3 weeks in July, it's just all day long. That's all they focus on. And I was hoping for the same kind of thing out here, but saw them crawl in the house, but I didn't see fish keying in on them at all.
My oldest son lives in eastern North Carolina. And there was a big cicada hatch over there
Yeah.
on Kerr Lake. He was going out there on Kerr and Upper Roanoke, fishing out there and using an orange and black popper and catching catfish. Wow. I mean, he caught everything, bass, catfish, stripers, everything was eating cicadas. He said, go out there early in the morning, took his kayak out there, and he said, Dad, he said, it looked like the water was boiling. They were just eating these things because they were falling out the trees. Like we had one day, we were going out to the little moat, and the wind, that second day, the wind was blowing, and those things were popping on the water. And I was throwing a fly the day before I've been catching fish. It would pass right over me, and you'd see one of those cicadas hit and come up out of nowhere. It's like, oh, you just eat that cicada. And I didn't have one cicada pattern in my bag. You did though, did you?
Well, I did the next time I went.
Yeah, so it was a great spring. We have to wait too long for that to happen again. But any other fishing reports, anything else? Okay, so let's begin the program. I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna watch a video by Mel Krieger. I have a little story on that. In the video that I copied from DVD to hard drive, it got clipped off a part of it where he introduces a character named Joe Schmuckenpop. They go, wears a cap like this, and he's a great fly caster. Well, he thinks he is. He wears a cap because somebody wants to be a big ball player. So he gets out there and he's casting like this. What's wrong with my casting? You'll see him quite a bit. I gotta tell you, when Red Stick Club formed in 1988, one of the first meetings we had casting contest. And I got there, I thought I was a pretty good caster, right? The guy's casting 50, 60, 70. The winner was like 82 feet. I got out there, nice cast to 40 feet. Hey, I'm trying to get to 50 feet, right? And I can't get to 50 feet. And I made every casting fault that's on this video right here, trying to get from 40 to 50. And so a couple months later, the club watched a video by Mel Krieger called The Essence of Fly Casting. And it was a great video. I went back home, I ordered it, I bought it, I watched it. And of course, there's a lot of great information in that video. And then of course, I took all these classes and workshops and I got a lot better at casting. Well, in 1993, I went to the National FFI conclave in Livingston. And that was the biggest conclave they've ever held, was that one in 1993. And they had all these big names in fly fishing. Jack Dennis, Lefty Cray, Maggie Merriman, John Cave. Well, Mel Krieger is one of these guys. And so I signed up for a class with Mel Krieger on fixing casting faults. Now, this video didn't come out until about 8 years after that event, but everything that we did at that workshop was identical to what we're going to see in this video today. And how it paid dividends was the following years we're talking about earlier. The following year, that year at that conclave was the initiation of the casting certification program. And so that spring, they had the second casting certification examination down in Florida. And I was there, and I registered along with about 65 other people. They registered for certification. 10 of us passed. And that exam was a lot easier then than it is today. Well, a lot of people focused on doing the skills section, the execution section, 40-foot roll cast, aerializing 60 feet of line, making a 75-foot cast, doing a reach man, things like that. What they didn't focus on was you had to show me a bad cast. Show me a tailing loop, show me, a cast out of plane. Things like that, things we're going to see in this video. Well, hey, I said, hey, I know this. Not only I can't demonstrate it, but you had to explain what it was and how to fix it. Everything that you can see in this video today. And so that's what helped me pass that test. And what the purpose of it is to self-diagnose your casting. Or if you're with someone else that's learned how to cast, helping diagnose their casting errors. So I think this is one of the best videos out there for casting. Definitely one of the top 3. And so let's get started and watch it.
On top of that, it's entertaining.
Yes, I'll tell you, he's quite the character. Everything that you see in this video, he's like that in real life. In fact, some people don't like him because he's got like a sailor's tongue. Sometimes he'll let a few words drop that, that's a little, but he's definitely a character. He's one great guy. He and his wife, Franny, were some of the nicest people I ever met.
There are many different styles in fly casting. There's a wide variety of concepts on analysis and instruction and what have you. One of our hopes in this video is to really make a distinction between substance and style. And that is a commonality among all fly casting instructors and fly casting analysts. Let's begin with some basic mechanics of a fly cast. That's genuine substance. And that's something that is easy to understand. I don't want you to think of it as a real difficult, complicated thing with formulas and lines of force and run. It's simple. It's really an easy thing to understand. What's difficult is the execution. Basic mechanics of a fly cast. First of all, let's define this casting stroke. Looks something like this. This V-shaped angle is what we do to cast. I'm going to explain more of that later. For want of a better word, let's call this a casting arc, this particular angle in this position. Now, one of the truisms in fly casting is that what we try to do is keep the backward cast and the forward cast in the same plane. That's both vertically and horizontally. That simply means that if I were casting parallel to the water in front, what I'd like to do is make my backward cast parallel and back so that they'd be in plane like that. In order to achieve that, I have to take this casting arc. And make it quite upright. Now, if I want a higher back cast, maybe there's trees or bushes or something behind me. If I want a higher back cast and a lower forward cast, one of the things I have to do is tilt this whole casting stroke forward. Sometimes I want trajectory on the forward cast. I want to really throw a long cast. Whenever possible, I try to drop my back cast low so I can get some trajectory going high like this and really get some distance. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take this casting arm, this casting stroke, and tilt the whole thing backward like this. The shape of the line as it rolls out over the water is commonly called a casting loop or a loop. There are only three basic loop shapes that we have to contend with. Let me show you those. One is a good loop, and a good loop is shaped like a tipped over U or V, and it looks like this.
Also known as a tight loop.
Beautiful. A poor loop or an open loop looks like this. Usually a beginner's cast, and it usually collapses on the water like that. A loser. And last but not least is our old friend, the tailing loop or the cross loop. And it looks like this. Bring tears to your eyes. This is the kind of a loop that ties all kinds of weird knots in the end of your brand new leader. Comes back looking like a spider web. Let me show you how those three loop shapes are formed. They're formed by the path of the tip of the rod during the casting stroke. Let me show you how that works. We take this rod apart here, take this section out. I'll take this section out here and just lay that down there. Let's pretend this is the casting stroke. You start here and you end here. If the tip of the rod traveled in a straight or near straight path like this, beautiful loop. If, however, the tip of the rod travels in a circular path, a convex path, a circle path like this, if it travels in this path, we get a big fat loop or a non-loop. On the other hand, if the tip of this rod travels in a concave path, it goes down below the thing and comes back up. So it's kind of a dipping path like this, a concave path. We get a tailing. So here's what happens in casting. Good casters adjust the size of their casting stroke to fit the amount of.
Cut off, we introduce Joe Strong. Don't get see Joe right here.
I want to sling that sucker out there. Let's analyze Joe's cast. Joe was getting a big fat loop or a non-loop. What is a non-loop caused by? It's caused by a convex path of the rod tip, a circular path of the rod tip. You know what we tell little kids? We tell little kids that when you cast, you gotta go stop, stop, and the line goes out. It's not flop, flop. Stop, stop. But the little kids go stop, stop. They learn in about 30 seconds. Gonna take Joe a little longer. I want you to watch Joe very carefully. The tip of the rod swung around in a convex path. I want you to watch his grip very carefully. Because the way to solve that problem is to either use a tighter casting stroke like this, or put a little more bend in the rod so the tip flattens out. I get a beautiful, wonderful look. You know, if you look carefully at Joe's hand, you'll notice that he's got the grip crossways against his fingers like this. The inclination with that grip is to open up the stroke because I have no distortion of my wrist here. If I want a tighter casting stroke, I have to distort my wrist. It hurts actually. What I can do instead of that grip is I can use it at an angle across my hand in a grip possibly called the key grip or with my forefinger on top. And now with my grip across in this manner, the rod assumes a much more comfortable position for a tight casting stroke. Maybe we could solve most or all of Joe's problem, changing his grip. I'm just having trouble with this cast. It either hooks or collapses out there. I just don't know what's wrong. Look at that collapse out there like that. Let me try that again. It just won't shoot the line. Joe was having problems with that cast because there wasn't very much efficiency in the cast. All fly casting is predicated on straight line paths. What we need is the back cast and the forward cast in the same plane. And what Joe was doing was throwing the back cast at an angle this way and then trying to cast straight in this direction. Very difficult to do. And it's a very common fault when you have an open stance like that, because there's a strong tendency to swing the rod around in this direction. What we have to do with Joe is convince him that the cast has to go in the same plane, both vertically and horizontally in the direction of the cast. What he should have been doing, instead of this, he should have been doing a straight cast and then the line shoots out. God smiles down upon you. Just can't seem to get that cat straight to the target. It always kicks over to the side. Watch it. It goes right off to the side there like that instead of going straight. See how it goes to the side? Terrible. Joe couldn't get that straight cast because his hand was turning as he made the cast. And if you twist your hand while the cast is being made, it will tend to hook to the side. If I twist it this way, it'll hook to the side the other way. Sometimes a hook cast like that can actually be planned. And as you come forward, you turn your hand, and that's what Joe is doing. As he comes forward, he was turning his hand like that. And naturally, the fly wants to kick over to the side. What he has to do when he wants a straight path is keep his hand in the same plane. Straight as an arrow. Straight as an arrow. Hook cast. Sometimes you want to do a hook cast. But if you want that real accurate cast, keep your hand in the same plane throughout. Okay, I'm ready to cast. Joe's timing between back and forward casts were much too fast. Good timing, one of the most difficult things to communicate and teach in all of fly casting, and one of the most important concepts in fly casting. You know, there are many, many ways that we teach it. Some people have people turning sideways to their cast and watching the back cast, watching the forward cast, back and forth like this. And that's a help. That gives the people a little bit of a feeling of a sense of rhythm and timing that goes back and forth. That's a good one for a very short cast. You have a lot of people teaching, watching the back cast. Usually you have to open your stance, or what you have to do is actually turn sideways. But you open your stance, make the back cast, you can actually watch it going back and forth. Back cast, forward cast. It's not bad. It has some weaknesses, however, and I want to explain some of those weaknesses to you. Watching every back cast will develop a habit of turning and watching the back cast. Remember Joe, when he turned like this, there was a strong inclination to throw the line in that direction, out of plane. So that's a little bit of a weakness. There's also a weakness in that pretty soon you get tired of looking all the way back, and although you develop the habit, you'll notice a lot of people turning and looking at their hand like this. And actually developing a sense of timing by watching their hand and turning their head. Half the time, they're not even looking where they're fishing. Exceptionally good concept in Alaska, where you may have a grizzly bear coming up behind you, so you can watch it. There are some people actually turning and watching the tip of their rod like this. That gives them a sense of timing. Exceedingly good for bird watching. It's a very, very good thing. But this move back and forth turns out to be a loser. I think it's a good thing some of the time. Don't get into too strong a habit. You know what I like in teaching timing? I like people to bend their knees. Don't stand up and lock like this. Bend their knees so they get a little bit of body motion. Measure the forward cast. Shoo, 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 shoo. Pretty soon you're going to get a sense of rhythm and timing on the cast, and God will smile down upon you. I think good timing comes from repeated casts and practice. But try all of these different techniques in communicating good timing. I'm just having trouble getting distance on these casts, and I think I'm doing everything right. Look at that beautiful loop. Beautiful loop. Beautiful loop. I've got that just perfect. Now the last cast. Collapse. Terrible. Let me try that once more. But are they supposed to shoot out with these good loops? It's just not shooting out. Poor Joe. He's got the last cast syndrome. What you do is build up the adrenaline a little bit, you know. Get nice rhythm going, back, forth, Everything is wonderful under the world. Last cast, you don't wait, bang, and it collapses. What you got to do is wait on that last cast. You know what tournament casters do? Sometimes they build up on a distance cast. they build up the adrenaline. They get the false cast going like this, and on the last cast, they know they're gonna go too quick, so here's what they do. Wait, and then make the cast. And it goes over the horizon. Joe's gotta wait out that last cast. I'm having a terrible time here, guys. I'm getting a tailing loop going forward like this, and my back cast is getting caught on the grass. Watch my back cast. It's a disaster. I'm hooking on the water, on the grass, every place. Watch this thing. Terrible. What am I doing wrong? Joe was making an inefficient backcast. And he was doing it in the manner of many of our intermediate casters. What he was doing on the backcast is starting the rod here and trying to throw back to here. Well, what he had then is a casting stroke that looked like this. It was doomed to go down. Do you see that? Watch that again. This is a very common error. Watch that again. Start here and throw the line back for the backcast. A disaster. A great backcast is not this. It's this. What you have to feel on a great backcast is this move. Bang! That's a great backcast. Bang! It almost feels like you're trying to throw up. Now you've got a great backcast. Power here. If you bring your rod up here and power here, you're in trouble. Not only are you in trouble there, but look at my hand behind the rod, my elbow behind my hand. All I can do with this is push forward. You saw what happens when you push the rod forward. When I'm back in this position and push the rod forward, I get a tailing loop. So Joe's big problem is making this backcast. See my elbow behind my hand? All I can do is push forward. If I lift this way, I can pull the rod through and get a beautiful cast. This is going to be a hard thing for some of you intermediate. It's not this for a back cast. It's this for a back cast. Simple concept, difficult execution. I try to do everything they tell me. They said, accelerate to a stop. They said, go slow and then fast. That's what I try to do. I take my hand and I go slow and then fast. Look at that thing collapse like that. It just isn't working. Joe wound up with a tailing loop again. In this instance, he started so slow that the rod really didn't begin to bend until it was halfway through. The result was too short a casting stroke, concave path of the rod tip, tailing loop. The application of power, the most difficult thing to communicate that I know of. And we use words like accelerate to a stop, speed up and stop, go slow and end fast, and et cetera, and they don't really work real well. Let me try one more for you folks. One of the first things that happens is when you start forward with a line, is nothing happens with the line, the rod just bends. The rod just bends, and once the rod is bent, you can sling the line forward. I don't want you to start fast. I don't want you to start fast. Watch this. This is fast. That's not it. I don't want you to start slow like Joe did. I want you to start strong. I want you to start heavy. I want you to bend that friggin' rod as the first move in the cast and then sling the line. Watch it go. Watch this line go. I'm going to bend the rod. Look at that thing go. The secret is start the stroke heavy. Start it strong. Bend the rod. And then you can just let it go and it's going to go forever. You see that? Watch that again. Watch that again. I'm going to first move forward and bend the rod and sling the line. Room. Room. Look at that thing go. It's the secret. Guys, the feel of fly casting. It's so hard to describe. We talk about an apple on the end of a flexible willow stick. We talk about Sam Snead's super smooth, oily swing. You know what happens? The tip of the rod accelerates to a stop, but your hand bends the rod, slings the line. I want you to try some of your practice bending the rod without a line. I'm going to take all the line out, and just have a bare naked rod. And I want you to feel the rod going. See that bend? I'm forcing a bend in the rod. That's one of the reasons we try to sell you on a because it's easier to bend the rod with a firm wrist than it is with a flexible wrist. Works both ways. But you've got to bend the rod. You know what happens? I want you to watch how I bend this rod. You can bend it like this. But if I really wanted to bend this rod, what I would do is this. This is how you cast. This is how you bend the rod. This is how you throw the line. If Joe could get this feel, he'd be a great caster. Now let's look at tailing loops and what causes them. Allow me to repeat. For all practical purposes, all tailing loops are caused by a concave path of the rod tip during the casting stroke. There's one exception to that, and that exception is that it's also caused by a concave path of the back and forward cast. That means if my back cast was up here, like in the old steeple cast, and I tried to make a forward cast in this direction, I could also get a tailing loop. Let me show you that. Now, let's look at some of the ways that we get a concave path of the rod tip during the casting stroke. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do and stop the rod, bend the rod, but the line keeps tangling in itself. Look at this. Look at that. Terrible. I don't know what's wrong. Once again, Joe is using too short a casting stroke for the amount of bend in the rod. The result is a concave path of the rod tip and a tailing loop. What Joe has to do is, with that much power in the cast, the rod's bending way over. What he's got to do is open up and use a longer stroke. Instead of this short stroke from here to here, he must use a longer stroke from here to here. Watch. Out she goes. Good loop. Joe's stroke was too short. This longer stroke will fit the amount of bend in the rod, and I get a beautiful loop going forward. You must adjust the size of the casting stroke to fit the amount of bend in the rod. More problem. Okay, let's start from the cast with Joe. What Joe was doing is either throwing a tailing loop or he was driving his cast right down at the water. And that resulted in his creeping forward, made the back cast, creep forward. And I want you to watch carefully. He's actually making the cast from an almost upright position. He's got to wind up with either a tailing loop or smashing a loop to the water there. This creeping motion is one of the worst things that can happen to an intermediate or even an advanced caster. Let me tell you a little bit about casting. I think fly fishermen are type A personalities in the main. Type B personalities become bait fishermen. You heave a bait out on the water, put it in a fork stick, wait for something to happen, sip a little brandy. Not bad, not bad at all. The type A's can't handle it. They get out in the river. They got to really move around like that. Well, in fly casting, one of the things we have to do is we cast back, wait, and come forward. Type A's can't wait. They do all kinds of weird and crazy things between back and forward cast. Worst thing that they do is creep forward. They make the back cast, creep forward, and then try to make the forward cast. Terrible. What's happening is the line is moving back, the rod is moving forward. Somehow, if they're lucky, they connect about here and somehow heave the line badly forward. Bad deal. A really bad deal. You know, there is a solution to that. Between back and forward cast, we can do something that almost all experts do. And that is, instead of creeping forward, we're going to drift backward. We're going to make the stop and then go back with the rod. Now, what's happening is we're feathering that line to a stop, cocking the rod in a perfect position to make a forward cast. A really great moving cast. This drift will transport you from an intermediate caster to an expert caster. One of the things that we do in drifting is on short casts, we drift shortly, and on long casts, we drift long. Let me show you how that works. Do is go stop, drift, cast. On this short cast, a short drift. On a long cast, let me pull out some line here. Let me show you a long cast. We can pull out a bunch of line here and get this line out. And on long cast, we make a long drift. We go stop, all the way back. Look at that line go out. This is fun, guys. This drifting is really a beautiful move in casting. You know something? I can almost feel the line. It really is a wonderful aid to timing. Stop. Out she goes. My problem is I can make short casts beautiful. Look at this. Nice short cast. I have no problem. Flip, flip, beautiful. Flip, flip. Everything is fine. Try to get some line out. Friggin' thing. Hell no. Watch this. Flip, flip. Does it every Joe's problem is. Joe is making that rod tip dip as it comes through. His power application is too abrupt, it's kind of big. Well, that's natural, because in the short cast, all you want is that little dink, because what's happening is the rod is only traveling for a very short path. Watch this. Watch it. Watch Joe. Watch Joe. It's flick. Flick. Beautiful loop. But when Joe tries to do a flick on the long cast, it doesn't work. The rod tip dips down. Because on the long cast, where the rod is bent more, and when you have a wider casting stroke like this, the rod has to stay bent throughout the cast. On a short cast, it's flick, flick, flick. On a long cast, I want you to spell wump with 3 U's. Wump. Watch that in action. Short cast. Flick, flick. Beautiful. Flick, flick. Let's get a long cast on. On a long cast, if I go flick, flick, I want to get a tail, like Joe did. But what I'm going to do is go wump. See that sucker go out there? The longer the cast, the longer the stroke. The longer the stroke, the more U's in wump. You've got to stay with it all the way. I'm casting good now. Get real nice loops. Look at this thing. Beautiful loop. Beautiful loop. Then the wind comes up and I have to do it just a little bit harder. Disaster. What happened? Tails on me every time. What's going on? Joe is doing something very basic. What he's doing is pushing the stroke through. What he does is take the rod and he pushes it through like this. With today's modern rods, he can get away with a lot of that because the rods are very stiff. And the stroke looks like this. That's good, but it's not great. A great stroke is a pull-through stroke, and it looks like this. Let me show you how that works with the rod. If I push through the way Joe did and do it very gently, I get a pretty good loop. I get a pretty good loop. Now I do it just a little bit harder, and even this stiff rod begins to give up and dip and cause a tailing loop. See that? Just a little bit harder. And I lose it. Now I'm going to show you a pull-through stroke. Instead of pushing through like this, I'm going to pull through like this. Watch this. Let me get that leader straightened out. This is the terrible thing that happens with tailing loops. Look at this thing, all fouled up. Let's straighten it up. Got a knot or two in here. Okay, let me show you that cast. Now instead of a push through, this is a push through. Watch my hand. Watch my hand. This is a push through. This is a pull through. I'll do it a little harder.
That's where, right at the end, the hand comes forward.
I'm going to do it a little harder yet. I'm going to do it with every bit of strength I got in my body. And the loop holds. It's one of the secrets of casting. Pull through motion. Hand before the tip of the rod. Here's what to think. On all casting strokes, start by pulling the handle forward before the tip of the rod and then through. Pull through stroke. Now, on a very long cast, it's very easy to see. On a long cast, my rod is way back here, and I would pull, and then make the cast. We make one of those for you, so that you see how that works. The biomechanical company has actually indicated that the closest thing to a distance cast is a javelin throw. Stop, drift way back, pull it through. Look at that thing go. I can do that with every bit of strength I got in my body. I can pull that thing through with every bit of strength I got in my body, and I get a good loop. If I pushed it through, I'd be dead. On a short cast, it's a more subtle thing. Watch this on a short cast. On a short cast, it's a little pull here. A little pull here. That is really important concept. You're going to find many instructors that say, drop your elbow. What they're doing is actually teaching this pull through motion. You're going to have other people say, get your hand up as high as your head and pull your hand down. That's exactly the pulling motion that we're referring to, but it should take place on all castings. You can pull it here, you can pull it here. You know what I want you to imagine? I want you to imagine you had a 3-foot piece of rope and a board sitting down here. You took that rope and you want to really smack that board as hard as you could. What you do is pull the rope. What? You could almost break a board doing that. If you did this with it, you're out of it. It's a little bit like a hatchet. You took a hatchet and tried to chop. Once again, I'm having trouble with those stinky tailing loops. Watch this. I think I got that cast down pretty good. Let me get this line out here. I got it. Look at that thing tangle. Let me do that again. Watch this. Get a nice smooth thing and a line tangles like that every time. What am I doing wrong this time? Joe is stopping the rod too soon. In effect, shortening the stroke and once again creating a tailing loop. One of the things that's happened is the rod is bent and it's pulling the line behind. Everything is right. And then if you unload too soon, the following line either hits the rod or goes underneath and creates a tailing loop. What he's got to do, instead of stopping the rod here, he's got to stop it further forward. Joe was stopping the rod right here. It should have been stopped right here. The important thing to kind of feel as you're casting is that the bent rod unloads. You almost put a loop in the rod itself. The rod unloads in the direction of the cast, which means the rod has to stop here. If it unloads here, it either throws the line up in the air or it creates a tailing loop because the stroke is too short. So all Joe has to do on that is stop the rod further forward on the forward cast. Instead of stopping here, you must stop here. Watch that. Joe is stopping right here and getting a tailing loop. If Joe stops right here, the loop sails out of the intended direction. Pretty simple solution to that.
Okay, let's stop it right here. There's a few more topics.
That's Jordan.
Okay. There's a few more topics, but I don't want to get too far into the did we lose our audience? Did I see Jeff somewhere. Let's see if we can get this. Is that you, Jeff?
I am here.
Yeah, you look dark. Are you
Oh,
in the
That's kind of the story of my life, Catch.
dark? Okay, so what we're gonna do now,
I can.
watching the video is, we'll have you, me, and Chris, address any questions or talk about any topics that, anybody may have. I did make a few notes on this and, for example, he talked about backcast stop position. You know, when I first started fly casting, they were teaching this stroke 10-2. Remember that, Jeff? They used to teach.
Absolutely.
And of course, you couldn't help but throw a wide loop because that's too wide an arc. And so, I discovered later from going to these workshops I was telling you about, it's really a 10-1. It really should be a 90-degree casting stroke that you want to execute on there. And so that certainly is, the other thing is we talk about stroke and arc. Y'all know what the difference between stroke and arc is? Well, the stroke is actually the distance that the rod tip is going to travel, like this. This, for example, is an arc right here. This is the same arc. Okay, get it? It's the same 90 degrees. This is also 90 degrees. I'm doing it over a wider distance. And if you see distance casters, like, competing in distance casting contests, they're keeping that same arc. But what they're doing is they're bringing the rod back, just like you mentioned in the video. And even doing that little drift sometimes to get that little extra distance of stroke. And get more power, more time for that rod to bend, more belly power. So that was a few little notes I had on there. I'll say this too. He mentioned about timing using the forward cast. And that's an excellent idea. That's how I got my timing down, was judging what the forward cast was. And just after a while, if you key on the forward cast, how long it takes the forward cast to unroll out, going back on the back cast using that same period of time. Your mind starts to collect that. It's amazing what your mind can do, but it makes a mental note about, that timing and everything. And keeping that relaxed position on the casting helps as well. Other than that, I think everything's self-explanatory. Jeff, you have any thoughts?
Catch, I missed it first. I watched that video this afternoon, but when they were doing the distance casting, one thing that I saw that I've never really picked up on was that they made a real long back cast. Then they made a creeping move, and then they made a drifting move. I've never paid much attention to that.
Well, I think the creeping move is one that's an error. That's a fault. And you see that happen, it's like people are getting ready to go forward before the line is, straightened out behind you.
But in distance casting, on those long distance casts, what they were doing is they're making a back cast to go too far down. And then they creep to raise the tether point back up, and that pulls the rod leg back up. And then to set up for the next cast, they're drifting back again.
Yeah.
That was an interesting move. I've never paid that much attention to that.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. That's interesting, but it works. The physics work on it. So I guess, what do you think about, when he talks about keeping that wrist, notice he keeps his wrist back. You get that final acceleration through. In other words, acceleration means change of velocity. So what you want to do is you want to start kind of slow and accelerate to a stop. And just doing that little split second wrist gives you that extra acceleration at the end, that little snap. Doug Swish used to call it the microsecond wrist. Joe Wolf has a name for it. I can't remember, but it's that
Power snap.
Yeah, the power snap, whatever. Your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I've never really been a flick promoter because I think it causes a little boink, a little dip at the end if you're not careful. But I know one of my other casting buddies, he calls the flick, when you flick, you actually stop. So when he says flick, he actually increases the stopping motion. I've never thought of it like that, but if you kind of teach flick, it flicks and accentuates the stop.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to make that, you have to open up that arc just a little bit. To kind of keep that tailing loop there, from forming sometimes. Anybody, any other questions, anything that you saw? Yes, sir.
So I have a question for Jeff. What do you think about that pull through that Mel was talking about? And I'm specifically talking about the pull through just before the stop. He's got he's got a rotation. You remember that part?
Yes. So I think when they talk about pushing and pulling and all that good stuff, what he's doing to pull is he's translating. He's moving his rod, his hand forward without any rotation.
And then he rotates again, right?
That is the pull.
It doesn't rotate, it just.
And then the rotation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Chris, I think that's Chris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He also showed that elbow dropping move,
Yes.
and that is a pull move.
Yes. More translation than rotation.
Do what?
More translation than rotation, right?
Yeah. Well, so it's kind of a fun thing to think about. But when the rod is leaned back and it's translating, it's not rotating, the rod will bend farther down in the butt section rather than in the tip section. So that's one of the big advantages of pulling rather than rotating. So I don't know if y'all have ever heard of like the 90-degree rule. Catch can show you with that rod there. When that line and that rod form a 90-degree angle, the tip bends. Just the tip. Now open that angle, Catch, to about 100 degrees and pull it. The tip quits bending and the midsection starts to bend. And then as you open it up even more, the butt section bends. When you start that translational move, that pull, you're actually bending that butt section of the rod rather than the tip section. That's where that pulling move really starts to take effect.
energy too. You're also losing your energy, because at this point right here, where's that line gonna go? It's gonna go up, and you let it go, so you're gonna form an open loop like this. Rod broken or something?
Could be. My grandson played with it.
Oh, yeah. Got a weird pin at that first guy.
Well, it's a whip, man.
That's a point you made in there about grip. You know, I see that a lot, especially in teaching, beginners. They have this grip like this, like, that's how they grab the grip, and it's a tendency, like you said, to break your wrist when you cast. And he said, just rotate your hand like this a bit, and you see this is a lot more comfortable, and there's less tendency to break your wrist. Another one is one that I learned from Gary Borger, and that was the finger grip like this, where you put your finger on. Now this is not one you'd want to use maybe if you're saltwater fly fishing, you're casting like a 9-weight or 10-weight rod, but for trout fishing, most rods, it's an excellent grip, because if you try to break your wrist with this right here, you can't. I mean, it all goes so far back. So it helps to keep that tight arc. To keep you. It's the habit of breaking your wrist now, causing big fat loops, as Mel calls it. Any other questions? So next month, we're supposed to have a cool front, right, Chris?
I'm all about it. Let's get it done.
So it's our last, well, almost last month of daylight savings time. So what we'll do is we'll have casting in the back starting at 5:30. And I want to see some of y'all taking some of the lessons we learned tonight and putting them to good use, right? And we'll do that prior to the meeting starting.
Well, raise a hand. How many people saw a mistake that you have made? Yeah. Now, how many people remember one of the many fixes that he told me? Yeah, you got one, you know.
Well, the good thing is this is on YouTube, or on YouTube right now, so.
I do have one
You can
technical
go back and
question.
look at it.
Yeah, what's the name of it again? What's the name of that video?
Flycasting faults and fixes.
Mel Krieger.
Our YouTube, it's gonna be in our YouTube channel,
It's hard.
yeah, so. Go ahead.
So I have a really kind of fine point technical question. One of the things that I'm learning, I think, is keeping, you know, the straight line, keeping the butt of the grip kind of close to here. We're coming back. And I have not heard the term drift, but I have noticed on keeping the loop on the forward cast, I'm getting to where I think I can control it pretty well without it tailing, is at some point, I think when I come back here, on that drift point, do you find a like small break in your wrist at that point? Pull forward and then like a slight push forward with your thumb at the end of the forward cast. In other words, stiff, stiff, stiff. It's like all one mechanism, and then a slight break here, pulling forward, and then a slight push forward with your wrist.
Like this.
Yeah, just a slight break on the back.
Yeah, gives it a little more
Okay.
acceleration.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that, but remember, it's discipline. Because what you don't want to do, is get to the point where you're doing this and breaking that wrist. But yeah, if you can do the same thing on the back cast that he was showing on the forward cast, where you just kind of snap it back.
I was just imagining what he was saying with the pulling motion and
Yeah,
keeping the
pull
hand
motion,
in
back
front of
cast.
the rod.
Pull
Yeah.
down,
You have that
Yeah.
slight adjustment.
Yeah, it works both ways.
Hey,
What you
Hey,
doing,
Catch.
Jack? Yes,
Can I see that move? I don't know his name, but can you turn a little bit sideways so I can see the other way? Other way. Turn the other way. There. Right. Do that again. So if you watch your upper arm, that is your big muscle. If you can learn to make that pulling move that he made and engage that big muscle, it is something that you will really appreciate later in life.
any closing thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, Catch, it's pretty interesting. I haven't watched that video for probably about 8 years. And when I first saw it, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I watched it again today, and my gosh, it was a totally new experience. I appreciated every bit of what he did. But the first time I watched it, I mean, I discounted him big time.
I found over the years that people who loved Mel Krieger, they hated Mel Krieger. And sometimes they did both. Just like you might have seen him one time and come back and watch him another time.
That's right.
Process. But, I mean, it works. I mean, it's, I've seen a lot of it applied. And I mentioned that workshop I took at National Conclave. I was probably the best caster in that group that day, and there were 12 other casters. And I guarantee you by the end of the 2 hours, everybody was casting much better. So.
Hey, question
Jeff was a
also,
great
Jeff.
instructor, great teacher.
Jeff, are you gonna go to, the, Aggie Land, day in November?
Yes,
We were
both
talking
days.
about that ahead of time. We were talking about that ahead of time. Okay.
Say again?
Jeff here too. You
The
say
gathering.
something?
That's what they call it, the gathering.
Yeah, the gathering, yeah.
Is that Toledo Bend?
No, it's in,
It's November, I think it's November 8th and 9th or 9th and 10th,
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday.
yeah. Do you remember the structure of it, how it worked on Sunday? Was that when they did the test or the pre-tests on Sunday? And then, Bill Gamble did something later on. I don't know if he's gonna be there or not this year.
Yeah, Bill Gamble is going to be there. Bill Gamble is going to be helping teaching. He's not going to be doing an individual presentation. He said if he does it again this year, he'll say the same thing he said the last 2 years. So he just wants to be involved and engaged. The Sunday is going to be broken out into 2 tracks. One track is going to be for potential examiners, somebody that wants to learn more about teaching, wants to explore becoming a CI. And the other section, they're going to run at the same time. And it is going to be for current instructors, whether you're a CI, an MCI, just a teacher at Parks and Wildlife, whatever you are. If you're currently teaching, you can be in that class, that group. So, and those are going to be 4 1-hour sessions for each group.
So you don't need to be a CI for the other track. You just need to be a casting instructor somewhere. Right.
Yeah, if you really consider yourself an instructor and in that boat, I think that would be the one for you. But it's kind of geared for instructors. The other one is geared for potential instructors in progress.
Got it.
Well, Jeff, we appreciate you being here tonight.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry I was late.
And all your insight and knowledge and expertise on this. Last chance to ask Jeff any questions.
Ask the hard question.